I've always believed that people reveal who they really are when they think no one is watching. Maybe that belief comes from things I've seen in my own life, small betrayals, little manipulations, quiet lies that shattered people who trusted too deeply. But nothing I've witnessed before compares to what I'm about to tell you. And honestly, when I first heard this story, I had to sit down. It had that kind of weight. The kind that makes you question how far someone can go when greed, fear, and infidelity all collide. Her name was Elena. And for a long time, she thought her marriage was steady enough, imperfect, yes, but stable in the ways that mattered. She worked long hours, kept the house in order, handled the finances responsibly, and believed her husband, Daniel, was doing his part. But life has a way of revealing cracks slowly, almost tenderly at first, like giving us a chance to notice before everything collapses. Most of us ignore those early warnings. Elena did too. It started with a shift so small she couldn't even articulate it. Something in his voice, maybe. Or the way he pulled away when she tried to hug him in the kitchen one night. She remembered that moment clearly because it was the first time she felt an invisible barrier between them, thin, but real. I've had moments like that myself, where you sense something is off but you don't want to admit it. Denial can be comforting, even when it's dangerous. Daniel began spending more time at work. Late meetings. New projects. Business trips that didn't quite add up. And yet he acted as if her suspicion was the real problem. Every time she asked a simple question, he'd twist it into an accusation. He'd sigh dramatically, shake his head, claim she was imagining things, even guilt-trip her into apologizing for asking. I've seen this pattern, too. People who know they're guilty often behave like the ones who are being wronged. The emotional distance grew sharper. Elena would sit down for dinner and Daniel would scroll through his phone as if she wasn't there. At night, he'd turn away from her, clutching his phone under his pillow like a secret he couldn't risk losing. Eventually, he stopped pretending altogether. He'd lock himself in the bathroom for long periods. He'd smile at messages he wouldn't show her. He'd come home smelling like unfamiliar perfume and claim it was someone on the bus. And then came the coldest shift of all, he started talking about the financial stress they were supposedly under. At first, Elena didn't understand. Bills were paid. Savings were fine. Investments were stable. They'd built that life together. But Daniel began floating the idea that they needed to reorganize ownership of assets for their own good. She didn't catch it at first, but later she'd realize he wasn't talking about protecting them, he was talking about protecting himself. One evening, he told her he wanted a divorce. Just like that. No conversation. No attempt to fix things. No reflection. It was delivered with the casual confidence of a man who had already made all the decisions and expected her to cooperate. Elena described the moment to me in a way that still stays in my mind. She said she felt like her body turned to stone while everything around her kept moving. She heard his words, but they landed without meaning at first, like echoes. Only later did they sink in. When she asked why, he acted like the victim. Claimed she didn't make him feel appreciated. Claimed they had grown apart. Claimed she was emotionally distant, which was a brutal projection considering how he'd been treating her. But the dagger came when he said he wanted the house. Not shared, not negotiated, he wanted the house for himself. The house she had bought before marriage, paid for with her own savings, and maintained with her own work. He told her, boldly, that he needed it more. He even implied she could find something smaller, something more suited to her new life. Elena didn't understand then, but she would soon. He planned to live there with another woman. The audacity almost feels fictional, but I've learned that real people can be far worse than anything a writer can invent. At that point, something inside Elena awakened, not anger, not yet, but awareness. A clarity. A sense that something was very wrong and that she needed to pay close attention. When a spouse suddenly pushes aggressive financial demands, there's always a reason. Greed rarely appears alone, it walks hand in hand with deceit. Still, even as she processed the shock, she tried to ask questions. Why the house? Why now? What changed? Daniel shut down every attempt. He'd either dismiss her or get irritated. He seemed to have decided that treating her poorly would make her compliance easier. But Elena wasn't as fragile as he hoped. And then came the first real clue. Daniel slipped one night. He came home later than usual, but this time he looked nervous. Like he was carrying a secret he hadn't fully tucked away. He went straight to the bedroom, changed clothes too quickly, then rushed to the shower. Elena smelled something on him, perfume again, but stronger. Not the kind you inhale faintly when someone sits next to you, but the kind that sticks when two people have been very close. I once knew someone who caught their partner cheating because the scent of someone else's shampoo lingered on a jacket. Infidelity always leaves traces. Always. But Elena didn't confront him. Not yet. She steadied herself. She observed. She listened. She waited. She chose silence over accusations. And that silence gave her space to think. Then she started noticing new details, his carelessness. His confidence. His certainty that he was untouchable. And something inside her hardened. One afternoon, after Daniel left for another late meeting, she walked through the house and noticed something peculiar. Some objects in the living room were slightly out of place. Not messy, not obvious, but subtly shifted. She felt a chill move through her stomach, a gut-level instinct that told her she wasn't the only woman living in that house anymore. That was the moment she made a decision. She installed hidden cameras. Nothing dramatic. No confrontation. No argument. She simply placed small, discreet devices in key places, entry points, hallway, living room, kitchen. Areas where someone would have to pass if they were inside the house. And she did it with a calmness that surprised even her. Maybe that's what happens when betrayal becomes obvious, you stop trying to save anything and start preparing for the truth. The next evening, Daniel came home late again. Elena acted normal. She cooked dinner. She asked simple questions and pretended to accept his vague answers. But that night, after he fell asleep, she reviewed the footage. And there it was. At 6:47 p.m., Daniel entered the house with another woman. They weren't distant or cautious. They were comfortable. Familiar. She was younger, dressed confidently, walking through the house as if she belonged there. They opened wine. They kissed. They laughed. And worst of all, they made themselves at home, literally. Elena watched every second without blinking. She told me later that she didn't even feel heartbreak in that moment. She felt confirmation. And oddly, that made her stronger. The next day, she reviewed more footage. And more. What she found was a pattern. A routine. A schedule. They'd been using her home as their sanctuary while she worked. Multiple visits. Afternoons. Nights. Daniel making himself comfortable with the woman he had chosen to replace her, all while insisting on taking the house in the divorce. I remember she said something that stuck with me, it wasn't the cheating that broke me. It was the shamelessness. She didn't confront him. She didn't ask questions. She didn't slip up. Instead, she backed up everything, videos, photos, timestamps, logs. She saved copies to multiple devices, cloud folders, secure drives. She treated it like evidence, not emotional baggage. And that was the turning point. Meanwhile, Daniel began escalating. He pressured her about the divorce. Claimed he couldn't wait forever. Told her the house should be fair game. He even tried to convince mutual friends that Elena was unstable, hoping to make her seem unreasonable. Classic manipulation tactic. I've seen people do that when they're preparing a narrative before a legal battle. Then he started lying more boldly. He told her he deserved alimony. Told her the court would side with him. Told her she was lucky he wasn't asking for more. It was like he lived in a world where consequences didn't exist. But Elena saw the bigger picture now. And she understood the value of patience. Weeks passed. The court date approached. Daniel grew cockier. The younger woman, the mistress, encouraged him, whispering plans about how they'd fix the place up after she was gone. Elena had footage of that too. She held on to everything. Quietly. Calmly. Strategically. Whenever she needed strength, she'd watch clips, not to torture herself, but to remind herself why she couldn't give up. Betrayal transformed her from emotionally wounded to dangerously composed. There's something powerful about someone who's been hurt but not destroyed. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, Daniel showed up almost smug. He greeted his lawyer with that confident, arrogant handshake men sometimes use when they think they've outsmarted everyone. Elena saw the mistress outside the courthouse too, waiting in a car, hiding behind sunglasses. The scene was surreal, almost cinematic. Inside, Daniel spun his story. He claimed he was the primary contributor to their lifestyle. Claimed Elena was irresponsible with money. Claimed she had changed emotionally, and he was forced to protect himself financially. Listening to him, you'd think he was delivering the performance of his life. He even wiped a fake tear at one point. Elena remained quiet. Her lawyer didn't interrupt. They let him talk. They let him build the narrative high enough so that the fall would hurt. When he finished, his lawyer pushed the demand for the house, stating that Daniel's future stability depends on retaining the marital residence. At that exact moment, Elena opened the file. She placed a folder on the table. Calmly. Deliberately. A folder that held the truth he never imagined she possessed. Inside were the timestamps. Photos. Screenshots. And a USB drive containing hours of footage, the extravagant, shameless betrayal, all occurring inside the house he claimed he needed for his future stability. As soon as the first clip played, everything shifted. Daniel's face drained. His lawyer froze. The judge stared in disbelief. In the video, Daniel could be seen laughing, kissing, drinking wine, lounging on the couch with the younger woman, acting as if the house had already been handed to them. And Elena? She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just watched silently, finally letting the truth speak for itself. The courtroom fell into a silence so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. You could almost hear the air shift when the video of Daniel and his mistress flickered across the screen. And I swear to you, anyone sitting in that room could see his soul leave his body in real time. The confidence he had walked in with evaporated like mist under sunlight. His lawyer tried to maintain composure, but even she started blinking rapidly, her jaw tightening, her hand clenching her pen so hard it looked ready to snap. She knew, everyone knew, that their entire argument had just collapsed. How could they insist Daniel needed the house for emotional stability, while he was using it as a private hotel for his affair? The judge paused the video, took a long breath, and leaned back in his chair. You know that kind of breath adults take right before giving a lecture they never wanted to give? That's exactly what this was. A disbelief mixed with disappointment, and just a hint of anger. Judges see a lot, more than most people can imagine, but every now and then a case hits that nerve. This was one of them. Daniel opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like someone trying to wake up from a nightmare only to realize it's real. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Meanwhile, his mistress, still waiting outside in the car, had no idea that her face had just been immortalized on court-recorded video. Elena didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her stillness was powerful, almost majestic in a quiet way. After months of manipulation, after being lied to, gaslighted, intimidated, and blamed, she now held the truth like a shield. I've seen people who crumble under confrontation, and I've seen people who rise when their dignity is pushed too far. Elena rose. The judge turned to Daniel with a tone that cut sharper than any insult. "Mr. Hale, are you prepared to explain this?" Daniel stuttered, stumbled, reaching for half-formed excuses that dissolved before they even left his mouth. He blamed stress. He blamed misinterpretations. He blamed friendly visits. He even tried to suggest the videos were taken out of context. But the footage spoke for itself. There was no context that could justify the way he carried himself so comfortably with another woman in a house he claimed he needed for his well-being. No justification for the intimate moments, the shared wine, the laughter echoing through rooms Elena had once filled with trust. The judge didn't allow the excuses to go on for long. He held up a hand, stopping Daniel mid-sentence. "That's enough," he said. Then he turned to Elena. "Ms. Reyes, do you have anything you'd like to say?" She shook her head. "No, Your Honor. Everything that needed to be said is in the footage." And she meant it. Her voice didn't shake. There was no anger, no tears, just a calm steadiness that made the room respect her even more. Sometimes silence is the loudest victory of all. The judge closed the file, straightened up, and spoke with the finality of a hammer striking stone. Given the evidence presented, it is clear that the marital home was used inappropriately and without the petitioner's consent. The request for full ownership of the home is denied. Daniel's head dropped. The judge continued. All marital assets previously claimed by Mr. Hale are hereby awarded to Ms. Reyes. Additionally, due to the petitioner's deceptive conduct throughout the proceedings, the court finds grounds to dismiss his claims to alimony. There was no dramatic gasp in the room, but there might as well have been. The weight of his downfall settled like dust after an explosion. Daniel's lawyer pinched the bridge of her nose, muttering something under her breath, probably calculating how fast she could exit the courtroom without being associated with this disaster. Daniel couldn't even look at Elena. And maybe that was the most honest moment he'd had in years. But the story didn't end inside that courtroom. When Elena walked out, she saw the mistress waiting in the car. The woman looked up, confused at first, then worried as she saw Daniel walking behind Elena with the expression of someone who just survived an emotional earthquake. Elena didn't approach her. She didn't need to. But the mistress understood anyway. The way Daniel avoided her gaze told her everything. You know, sometimes people imagine karmic justice as this flashy thing, fights, yelling, explosive confrontations. But real justice? Real justice looks like a quiet woman walking away while the guilty crumble behind her. And that's exactly what Elena did. She stepped outside, took a long breath, and felt something she hadn't felt in months, relief. The kind that doesn't rush in like a wave, but seeps into your bones slowly, quietly, until you finally feel alive again. Now free from the manipulative fog Daniel had cast over her, Elena began rebuilding her life piece by piece. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't instantaneous. Healing rarely is. But she was free. And more importantly, she was empowered. Daniel, on the other hand, found himself facing the consequences of everything he had worked so hard to hide. His reputation took a hit that no apology or explanation could repair. Friends who once believed his lies now distanced themselves. His own family was stunned by the footage. Even the mistress, after seeing how publicly he had fallen, pulled away. It turns out people who build their lives on deceit don't make good partners, even for each other. Without the house, without leverage in court, and without the sympathetic victim narrative he had hoped to build, Daniel had to start over from scratch. And not in the triumphant way he imagined. More in the paying rent in an apartment he couldn't really afford kind of way. Elena didn't revel in his pain. She didn't celebrate his downfall. She simply moved forward, focusing on rediscovering herself. She took back her home, not just legally, but emotionally. She repainted walls. Rearranged furniture. Tossed out old memories that no longer belonged. She created new routines, new habits, new spaces filled with calm instead of tension. She started gardening again. Something she had stopped doing during the worst moments of their marriage. Funny how healing often looks like returning to small joys we once abandoned. One afternoon, while planting new herbs, she told me something that stuck. I didn't win because I exposed him. I won because I stopped letting him define my life. I remember thinking how many people need to hear that. How many stay in harmful situations because they fear the unknown more than the familiar pain they already carry. Elena's story isn't just about infidelity. And it's not just about revenge either. It's about reclaiming power, quiet, strategic, dignified power. The kind that doesn't require yelling or threats. Just truth. And truth, when used with patience, can dismantle even the most carefully constructed lies. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. Elena received messages from several of their old friends, people who had believed Daniel's version of the story. Some apologized. Some didn't. But all of them now saw the truth with brutal clarity. One message stood out. It was from a woman who had once been close to Daniel's mistress. She wrote, "She told me she thought he owned the house. She thought you were the one leaving. She didn't know he was lying to both of you." Elena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The past was behind her, and every step she took now was forward. Daniel tried, once, to reach out. A text message. Something weak and half-hearted, "We need to talk." Elena didn't reply. Not because she was angry, but because she had nothing left to say. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to reopen a door that nearly destroyed you. Weeks turned into months. And one day, while sitting in her newly redecorated living room, sunlight spilling across her floors, Elena realized she was finally at peace. Real peace. Not the fragile kind that cracks under pressure, but the grounded, quiet, self-built kind that grows after surviving something painful. She had protected herself with intelligence, not vengeance. With patience, not panic. And she had won not just a legal battle, but her life back. Her home was hers again. Completely. Her future, also hers. Her heart, healing on her own terms. Stories like this remind me why truth matters, why protecting your peace isn't selfish, why paying attention to your intuition is vital, and why sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well afterward. Whenever I think about Elena's journey, I'm reminded of moments in my own life when I ignored red flags because I wanted things to be easier than they were. But the truth is, facing reality head-on, even when it hurts, is what sets us free. Her story isn't just about betrayal, it's about the courage to quietly gather your strength, hold your ground, and reclaim what's yours without losing yourself in the process. If someone listening to this is going through something similar, I hope Elena's path shows that staying silent isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's strategy, and sometimes, it's survival.